Hello everyone, Martin Mulder here for onthetracksof007.com. And in this video we're going to do something different. We're not going to visit a James Bond destination, but we're going to focus on where we're coming from. And this is the story of On the Tracks of 007. So how did it start? At a fairly young age, it must have been 1980, so I must have been 9. My father, he was in business, so he was always on the road, and he always brought back funny things in the evening, strange gifts from clients, and at some day he brought home 2 large cardboard boxes, totally filled with VHS cassettes, and they were illegal copies of films, and it must have been around 200 films. I still don't know exactly why he got them. I never got around to ask why that was, but I suddenly had access to over 200 classic movies. And it was an odd lot of different films, you know, ranging from World War II classics to German soft porn. So overnight I entered a totally new world, a fascinating world. And among the films were various classics that ignited a passion that I still feel today, actually, almost 40 years later. For instance, Once Upon a Time in the West was in it, and it started my passion for the Sergio Leone westerns. Star Wars: A New Hope was in it, and that made sure that I would not become a Trekkie. Enter the Dragon was in it, and that would be the reason that my room would be filled with Bruce Lee posters for the next years. And among the films was just one James Bond film, Moonraker. And it clearly was a copy for the Belgian market, because it had subtitles in both Dutch and French, which was a bit confusing at the beginning. And although everyone agrees that Moonraker is not the best James Bond film, I still have a soft spot for it for that particular reason, that it was the first one that I ever saw. Roger Moore, I thought, was about the coolest dude on the planet. And the story went all over the globe, you know, from Venice to Paris to Rio, LA, Iguazu, Guatemala, and I'm pretty sure that a spark ignited something there as well. At the time, it was possible to rent a video player together with your videos, and I soon discovered that if you connected the video player to the video recorder that we owned ourselves, that you could easily copy any rental video. So within a few months we owned the complete Bond series, the Sergio Leone westerns, the Bruce Lee collection, and so on. So those were really fascinating days for a teenager. Octopussy was the very first Bond film that I ever saw in the cinema. And a year later I saw a small article in the newspaper about the fact that they would be filming the new James Bond film, which was then called From a View to a Kill, near Paris at the Château de Chantilly. And we were about to go on a family trip to Paris, coincidentally. So I pointed this out to my parents, who loved the James Bond series as well. But and I urged them to stop there, but unfortunately they couldn't be persuaded. They were on a tight schedule, so unfortunately that never happened. But I was so close to being at a James Bond filming location while they were filming. It never happened. At the time, the Bond films were released here on video by Warner Home Video. And at some point, they also offered Stephen J. Rubin's new book, The James Bond Films. And I obtained a copy and I started reading all these fascinating facts about the Bond films. And more specifically, where they were made. So around when I was 14, I had been exposed to an overdose of exotic destinations, behind-the-scenes trivia, and about 14 James Bond films. When the internet became widely available, I've always been into computers and stuff. I like that. So I jumped on the bandwagon, and for some reason I decided I needed to have my own website. I liked it to be part of this new internet thing. And I filled it with whatever had my interest at the time. So there was a bit of Bruce Lee on it and James Bond, of course. And I thought, what can I include that is related to James Bond? And I thought, wait, what if I make a list of locations, you know, where these films are made? Because I had noticed that such a list wasn't available anywhere. So the information that I had came from whatever sources were available at the time, and there weren't that many. You know, you had a few books, Stephen J. Rubin's book. Obviously, you had some magazines like the 007 magazine. But most importantly, I used the end credits of the Bond films because there's always a lot of information there that you could use. And I just made one list. It was one page. You could just scroll down through the films. There were no images because that was difficult at the time. But the important thing was that it was a list in progress. It steadily grew. I don't think that domain names could be purchased easily at the time at all. So I had some unpronounceable URL, but I named it. You know, the title on top of it, the James Bond locations page. That's basically the start of it all. It was 1995, and it's so funny when you think about it. There were not that many websites around. You know, Google didn't exist, YouTube didn't exist. And so I enjoyed the fact that every day my page got at least some visitors. And that led to me receiving additional information from these visitors. And I remember having the HMS Tenby, the ship, listed as a filming location in You Only Live Twice. And suddenly I found myself emailing with somebody who had actually worked on that ship when they were filming Bond's Burial at Sea for You Only Live Twice off the coast of Gibraltar. So that was fascinating as well. It opened a whole new world. And around that same time, I had a girlfriend and we decided to go on holiday together. And I had set my sights on Jamaica, but we just couldn't afford it at the time. And a year later, we could. So off we went. And through my website, I had gotten in touch with a German guy, Dirk Kloosterboer, who had visited Jamaica the year before. And he had given me some very useful tips on certain areas. You know, if you climb this fence, you can get into that location, and if you see a guard, you have to bribe them because they all accept money and stuff like that. So I was well prepared, I thought. And while some aspects of my Jamaica trip have already been discussed in the very first episode of the 7 Minutes of Bond Locations, there are a few things are worth mentioning here. From day one, I preferred to book my own trips, you know. I always book my own flight, my own hotel room, my own rental car. I'm not the package deal guy. Booking.com did not exist at the time. And I remember I found an advertisement online from a lady in New York who offered her apartment in Ocho Rios as a holiday rental. So I just got to email her and I said I wanted to use it, I wanted to rent it, and she agreed, and that was it. And so we flew off to Ocho Rios and we found the address, and it turned out to be an enclosed community with dozens of holiday apartments, which I had never realized before. So I found an office there and I told them that I was here for the holiday apartment, you know, of that lady from New York. And after a while they found out who on earth I was talking about, and they rang her up. Luckily she was at home, she picked up the phone and she remembered me emailing her. And after some back and forth talk, she finally told them that it was okay, but she mentioned a totally different price than what had been listed in her ad. Luckily for me, she eventually gave in and we got the key. So that was quite an adventure. And And something else that I remember vividly from that very first location trip, that was me renting a car. I don't think there was anything like Avis. And when we finally found a local company, it was everything that I hoped it wouldn't be. The steering wheel of the car was on the wrong side. They drove on the wrong side of the road. The car was an automatic, which I wasn't used to at the time. There were potholes everywhere. There were no lines on the road. It was a real challenge to drive around there. And one day, returning home late, we discovered that Jamaica had no street lights either. So it was crazy. The people drove like maniacs. And I remember thinking, once I survive this, I will be able to drive anywhere. So that was quite an adventure. I did get to see all the places that I wanted. It was pre-digital camera time. So the photos I took, in retrospect, were terrible. They either had me in it or my girlfriend in it, or we were both in it. And in the years that followed, me and Dirk became very good friends, and we met on several occasions. Together, we developed the idea of maybe someday making a travel guide, you know, just to bring other people to these locations. And so from that point on, we carefully picked our holiday destinations, and we carefully looked at the angles of the photographs. There wouldn't be people in it, you know, just the right angle from the film, and we take a photograph, just because we figured we could use that for a book. And we started writing the stories on how to reach these locations, and that was very important. And sometimes we did small trips together, but often we both went our own way. And this enabled us to quickly add new stories and photos to our book project, which we now had called On the Tracks of 007. Okay, it sounded good. And I remember we had quite a bit of discussion about whether we could, or rather should, use 007 in the title, you know, for the copyright reasons. But since On the Tracks of Bond just didn't sound as catchy, we just left the 007 in, and I never had any complaints about it, fortunately. Around the year 1999, we started approaching publishers with our idea to bring out a travel guide to the James Bond locations. And the funny thing is, we had typed out 2 or 3 stories, and we left openings in the text where we glued in real photos. We thought that's easier. It would be easier at the time, and we sent these little books spiral bound. We sent them off to the publishers who we thought would be interested in it, without any luck. They simply didn't think that it would be that there was a market for it actually. Funny enough, we did receive a few of these books back. That's why I'm able to show you one, because it was returned to us. It's funny to look at. It's a travel story with a real photo glued in it. That's basically how we try to promote our book at the time. And the first page is actually a little introduction about us to the publishers, and it says below that the book will be A5 in size, and the page count will be 165. And I think both size and page count doubled eventually. After a while, I turned our book idea into a new website, and that's when we came up with the idea of having little screenshots from the film. We inserted that into our photos, and that would give people instantly the opportunity to compare old and new situations, which was actually, it worked very well, and we still use that today. And another something I did was to make the website files accessible on a CD-ROM. And suddenly we could include much more visual aspects, you know, like intros and videos, since it's hard to believe, but there was no easy way to share videos online in those days. So the colors have faded a bit, but these are some of the early CD-ROMs that we sold. It was mainly in this version, or in a paper cover, Bond history. We did continue to experiment with book publishing, and as a result, I can even show you a few examples of photo books that we made at the time. It's still wrapped in plastic, so I'm not going to open it, but these are just photo books that we made from our photos on the tracks of 007. I still have one left. And I know Dirk has one as well, or his family has one. And even a small version, you know, because those were very expensive to have made at the time. Smaller ones, pretty sure some of you will have these. I also started organizing small group tours to the various destinations, and that was a lot of fun to do. I like to talk about filming locations, and I give tours here in Holland as well, historical tours. So that's something I really like. And it was around this time that I learned that Dirk had been suffering from depressions every now and then. And we did a small group tour to Portugal, and that proved to be the last trip we ever did together. And in March 2004, I suddenly received an email from his wife that she and her two daughters were in total shock as Dirk had taken his own life that day, which was unbelievable. It was a very sad story, and it put the whole book publishing idea on hold for several years. I really didn't know what to do with it until I realized that turning it into an actual book would probably be the best thing to do anyway, because it would preserve Dirk's writings, and I could make it available for generations to come. So I discussed it with his wife, Ulrike, and she agreed. She thought it was a good idea. And luckily around that time, I also discovered ways to self-publish books that became popular at the time. And that's what ultimately happened. I asked my friend Delmo to draw two silhouettes, as we were well aware, obviously, of potential copyright claims. And Remmert, who now runs the Bond Lifestyle website, he designed some covers for me to pick from. And I finally settled with this one. I thought it was a brilliant cover. And the book would be a true travel guide to the Bond filming locations. So instead of dividing it into chapters per film, I decided to divide it into chapters per destination. And all the remains of every trip that I ever made, I had luckily hold on to that. So I could use bits and pieces of flyers, tickets, stuff like that. And I glued it together on a blank piece of paper, and these became the chapter introduction pages. I still have the originals here. It's just all sorts of stuff glued on a paper. And I scanned these in, and these became the chapter introduction pages. Finally, in 2008, the book was published, self-published, on the tracks of 007, and it got quite a bit of publicity, and it even made it into Penthouse magazine. And I remember picking up a copy at a local gas station, and I told the lady that I wanted to buy it because I was in it, and she was like, "Sure, whatever." Lots of girls in it, lots of very good stories. Where am I? Am I in it? I'm just wondering. Yeah, that's it. There you go. On the tracks of 007 into Penthouse magazine. So, being a frequent visitor of the Bond Stars Pinewood Studios events, I noticed that it was always the same group of people who came there and who stayed that weekend at the Pinewood Hotel, which is actually around the corner from the studios. So at some point I started organizing dinner parties there, and we would always have a special guest around. Norman Wanstall, Valerie Leon, John Marino, Nicky van der Zyl, and my Swedish friend Anders was always helped out with that. So I have to give him credits for that. And in 2015, when On the Tracks celebrated its 20th anniversary, the party there coincided with the Spectre premiere. And I had revamped the website to what it is today, and I threw a dinner party for 100 friends and James Bond fans from all over the world. And the icing on the cake was a wonderful live show by Cue the Music, who I had discovered through a tip from Terry Bamber. I also announced a new adventure, a 2-week tour of Japan for 2017. So that was to celebrate the 50th anniversary of You Only Live Twice, of course. And that wonderful group resulted, that resulted in a new publication, which was our guide to Japan, which would later be followed by a guide to Thailand, which I published this year, actually, together with Thomas Gleitzman, who helped out with that and who took amazing photographs for this. It's great stuff. And both these books, as you can see, have their cover artwork done by Jeffrey Marshall. So I need to give him credit for that. This is amazing stuff. In 2019, I coordinated the international 50th anniversary event for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which took place in Portugal and Switzerland. And fantastic locations like the Palacio Hotel in Estoril and Piz Gloria, of course, above Muren. And there hundreds of fans celebrated the film for 9 days, together with George Lazenby and many other cast members. Once again, Cue the Music performed, but this time at 3,000 meters altitude, high up in the Alps. And this wonderful event led to yet another book, which is the making of OHMSS 50, which was made together with my friend, photographer Sasha Brown. So Sasha gets all the credits for this because it's a wonderful book. Our latest adventure is making these videos for you, the 7-minute videos, and I sincerely hope you like them. They're a lot of fun to make. And I will continue to look for ways to reach James Bond fans worldwide. And with a new celebration coming up, there will be most definitely always also be new events, hopefully new books. So I'm just very happy to say that after 25 years, On the Tracks of 007 is still going strong. And that surely wouldn't have been possible without your help and support. So thank you all for that. Now, let's drink to that. What to choose, what to choose.
Take the shot. Take the bloody shot.
Okay. Cheers, guys. To the next 20.
Check out onthetracksof007.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.